No one could calm the Alpha King's rage until the rejected Omega touched him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Liao was never the kind of Omega anyone expected. In a world where power was everything and the strongest ruled, she was considered weak, nothing more than a rejected Omega with no special abilities. Her pack made that clear from the moment she was born. While others had strength, beauty, or the ability to communicate through their sense, Liao had none of that. She was quiet, unassuming, and had a rare ability to heal, but even that was dismissed as useless in a world that valued only power. The day of the great mating ceremony had come, a grand event where the strongest alphas would choose their mates, and the pack would celebrate their future alliances. Leah's heart pounded in her chest as she walked into the ceremony hall, her dress plain and worn, her head lowered in submission. She knew she wouldn't be chosen. She knew she'd be the one left behind, just like always. As she stepped forward, the pack's eyes were on her, and she could feel their judgment weighing down on her like a heavy cloak. Whispers rippled through the room. Rejected Omega, not worthy, too weak. Her heart shattered with every passing second. When the moment finally arrived, when the alphas began their selections, not a single one approached her. The laughter began, quiet at first, but then louder, echoing off the stone walls. She's too weak. She'll never make a good mate, someone sneered. Leah's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her skin as tears stung her eyes. But she refused to cry. She wouldn't give them that satisfaction. She turned to leave, her steps quickening as the mockery followed her. But as she reached the exit, a deep, rumbling voice stopped her in her tracks. She's mine. The words cut through the mocking laughter like a blade. Her breath caught in her throat as she spun around. The Alpha King, Kalin, stood at the center of the hall, his gaze locked onto hers, his eyes glowing with an intensity she had never seen before. His presence was commanding, and the entire room fell silent. She could feel the weight of his stare, like 1,000 eyes boring into her soul. Kalin, the Alpha King, was known for his ruthless nature, his power, and his indifference to anything that didn't serve him. He was the most feared alpha in all the land. And yet, in that moment, his eyes softened, just for a second, as if something had shifted. He took a step toward her, and everyone else stepped back. Leah stood frozen, unsure of what to do, her heart racing in her chest. The whispers resumed, louder now, but they were drowned out by Kalin's next words. No one has the right to mock you, Leah. You are mine. The room was silent after Kalin's words echoed through the hall, his gaze piercing into Leah's very soul. For a moment, the chaos outside of them seemed to disappear, leaving only the weight of his presence. Leah stood frozen, her heart racing so loudly she could barely hear anything else. She had never imagined this, never in her wildest dreams. The Alpha King, the most powerful alpha in the land, had just claimed her as his. His words still lingered in her ears, "You are mine." She wanted to speak, to ask him why, to demand answers, but all she could manage was a single breath, as if her very voice had been stolen by the intensity of the moment. Kalin took another step forward, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. His eyes never left hers as he approached, his tall frame radiating a quiet power that made even the strongest alpha in the room take a step back. His presence was enough to make the air feel thicker, heavier. The whispers had stopped, replaced with an eerie stillness. Why me? Leah finally found her voice, her words coming out barely above a whisper, but Kalin heard her. He stopped right in front of her, his chest rising and falling with the weight of unspoken emotions. You are not like them, he said simply, his voice low and commanding. You are more than they ever realized. Her mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what was happening. How could this be real? How could the Alpha King, who had been so indifferent, so ruthless, suddenly want her? The woman who had been humiliated just moments ago was now standing face to face with him, claimed by him. Kalin reached out and gently cupped her chin, lifting her face so their eyes met. His touch was surprisingly gentle, considering the reputation he had built for himself as a ruthless and unforgiving ruler. You may not understand now, he continued, his thumb brushing over her skin. But I will make you understand. I will protect you. He stepped back slightly, the weight of his words sinking in. The room was still silent, the pack unsure how to react. They had never seen their alpha like this before. He was a leader who ruled with strength, who crushed anyone who dared to defy him. Yet here he was, standing before a woman he had once dismissed, now showing a side of himself no one had ever seen. Leah could feel the eyes of the pack on them, their gazes full of shock and disbelief. She had been rejected, laughed at, and scorned for so long that she couldn't fathom why Kalin would change his mind. But something in his touch, in the way he spoke to her, told her this was real. She wasn't sure how, but she could feel the bond forming, something deep and powerful between them, something she couldn't explain. She was still trying to process everything when Kalin turned to face the rest of the pack. You will leave her be, he commanded, his voice unwavering. The authority in his words brooked no argument. No one will speak ill of her again. The pack remained silent, their eyes wide as they took in his declaration. Kalin had never spoken like this before, never made such an open stand for anyone, especially not someone like Leah. He turned back to her, his gaze softening just a fraction. You are no longer an outsider. You are mine. Leah felt a warmth spread through her chest, a rush of emotions she didn't know how to process. She had been nothing, a rejected Omega, someone who was always at the bottom of the pack. And now, she was standing next to the Alpha King, and he was claiming her as his own. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, whispers still swirling in the air, Kalin placed his hand on her back, guiding her away from the hall. The pack watched, stunned, unsure of what to make of the situation. But for Leah, everything had changed in an instant. She was no longer the rejected Omega, she was his. As they walked out into the cool night air, Kalin turned to her with a small, almost imperceptible smile. Come with me. I have much to show you. Leah nodded, her heart still racing, the world around her shifting in ways she couldn't fully understand. She had been humiliated in front of everyone, but in that moment, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. Kalin, the Alpha King, had claimed her. And somehow, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. As Kalin led Leah through the grand hallways of the palace, the weight of the day's events still hung heavily in the air. She had been claimed, but she could hardly wrap her mind around it. She had been humiliated, scorned by everyone around her. But now, here she was, walking beside the Alpha King, as if everything had changed in an instant. His presence was commanding, his every step exuding authority, but there was something else about him that had shifted. His earlier words echoed in her mind. You are mine. She couldn't understand it. She was just Leah, a rejected Omega with no remarkable qualities, nothing that should have made her worthy of his attention, much less his protection. Yet, here she was, by his side, no longer an outsider. The palace was even grander up close, with towering stone walls, intricate tapestries that told stories of past victories, and the faint smell of candle wax and fresh linen hanging in the air. They arrived at a large door, and Kalin pushed it open without a second thought, leading her into a spacious room with large windows that overlooked the kingdom below. Leah stood still for a moment, taking in the beauty of the view. It was overwhelming, but there was something else, too, an undeniable sense of power, of being in the presence of something greater than herself. Kalin turned to face her, his expression softening as he took in her reaction. This is where you'll stay, he said, his voice gentle yet firm. I know it's a lot to take in, but you need to understand that I've chosen you for a reason. You are different, Leah. I see something in you that no one else does. Leah wanted to say something, to argue, but the words caught in her throat. She was still trying to process everything, still unsure of what was real. She had lived her whole life believing she was weak, believing that no one would ever care for her, and now, suddenly, the most powerful alpha in the land had claimed her. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Kalin stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. You don't have to understand everything right now. All that matters is that you are mine, and I will protect you. The pack will learn to respect you, Leah, just as I do. She could feel the sincerity in his words, the certainty that came with them. It was strange, foreign even, but it also felt right. Kalin placed his hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. You've been rejected by everyone, but I see you. I see the strength in you that you don't even know you have. You will rise, Leah. The pack will follow. The words seemed to settle in the room, heavy and powerful, and for the first time since the ceremony, Leah felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't just the Omega who had been mocked and rejected. She was someone worth protecting. Kalin's gaze softened, and for a moment, he looked almost vulnerable, something she hadn't expected from the fierce Alpha King. I know this is overwhelming, he continued, but we will take it one step at a time. I will show you what it means to be by my side, to be my mate. She looked up at him, still unsure, but something deep within her stirred. It was as if the very core of her being recognized the truth in his words, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. Hope. Kalin's expression hardened slightly, but there was no malice in it, only determination. Tomorrow, the pack will know you are mine. They will see you as I do. The days of your rejection are over. Leah nodded slowly, her heart still racing, but something had shifted inside her. Kalin had given her a glimpse of something she had longed for but never believed possible. Respect, protection, acceptance. As she stood there, looking out over the kingdom with Kalin by her side, she realized that the world she had known was crumbling, and in its place, something new, something better, was beginning to take shape. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future that was different from the one she had been forced to endure. Kalin had claimed her, and now, she was ready to rise. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in her life, Leah felt like she had someone who would fight for her, someone who believed in her. She wasn't just the rejected Omega anymore. She was Kalin's mate, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The morning sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue over the kingdom as Leah stood beside Kalin in the grand hall, her heart still racing from the night before. The events of the previous day felt like a blur. One moment she had been the object of mockery and rejection, and the next, she had been claimed by the most powerful alpha in the land. It was almost too much for her to comprehend. Kalin stood tall beside her, his presence still commanding, but there was something different in the way he looked at her today, something soft, something reassuring. He had promised her that things would change, that the pack would see her as his, but Leah wasn't sure how that would happen. She had spent her entire life being invisible, dismissed, and now, suddenly, she was expected to be someone important. The weight of it all felt heavy on her shoulders. Are you ready? Kalin's voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to face him. His expression was calm, but his eyes held a depth that she hadn't seen before. It was as if he was waiting for her to find her place, to step into a role that she never thought possible. I don't know, Leah admitted, her voice small despite her best efforts. Kalin's gaze softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to have all the answers right now, he said gently. All I ask is that you trust me. Leah nodded slowly, the uncertainty still weighing heavily on her heart. I trust you, she whispered, but even as the words left her mouth, she wasn't sure if she truly believed them. She had trusted so many people before, only to be betrayed or ignored, but something about Kalin made her want to believe in the possibility of change. Good, he said, offering her a small smile. Then let's go. They walked together through the palace, the corridors lined with guards and servants who bowed their heads as they passed. It was clear that Kalin's authority was absolute, but Leah could feel the eyes on her, the whispers that started to rise as they moved through the halls. She had never been the center of attention before. She had never been anything more than a shadow in her own pack. But now, with Kalin by her side, all eyes were on her. They reached the grand hall where the pack had gathered for the daily meeting, and Leah's heart sank in her chest. She could feel the eyes of the pack members on her, their judgment and curiosity weighing heavily on her. Kalin didn't give her time to second-guess herself. He walked straight to the center of the room, his presence commanding immediate silence. Pack, listen well. Kalin's voice rang out, strong and unwavering. This is Leah, my chosen mate. From this moment forward, she is no longer to be treated as an outsider. She will be respected as my equal, as the Luna of this pack. Leah's breath caught in her throat. She had heard the word Luna many times, but she had never imagined it would apply to her. The pack members stared at her in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Kalin turned to her, his hand still resting on her back, offering her a silent reassurance. "Leah," he said softly, "you are mine. You have nothing to fear." His words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in her life, she felt a sense of belonging. The tension in the room seemed to dissolve, and slowly, the pack members began to murmur amongst themselves. Some looked at Leah with admiration, others with confusion, but none dared challenge Kalin's words. The Alpha King had spoken, and that was enough. Kalin turned to the pack once more. "I will not tolerate disrespect toward her. Anyone who dares to question her place will answer to me." His tone brooked no argument, and the room fell silent once again. Leah could feel the weight of their gazes on her, but she no longer felt afraid. With Kalin's protection, she was no longer the weak Omega she had been the day before. She was his, and that was enough. As the meeting began, Leah stood at Kalin's side, her heart still racing but with a new sense of determination. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer invisible. The pack would respect her, not because of what she had done, but because of the bond she shared with Kalin. And that bond, she realized, was stronger than anything she had ever known. Kalin had claimed her, and now, it was time for her to claim her place at his side. As the days passed, Leah began to settle into her new life, but the weight of her new role as Luna still hung heavily on her shoulders. Kalin had been true to his word. He protected her, guided her, and treated her with a care that she had never known before. But the pack's reaction to her still puzzled her. There were whispers, stares, and even cold silence in some corners of the palace. Not everyone was happy about the Alpha King's decision to claim her, but Kalin's presence was enough to keep them in check. One evening, as the sun set behind the palace, casting long shadows over the courtyard, Leah found herself standing on a balcony, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The quiet beauty of the kingdom below was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside her. She had never asked for this life. She had never wanted to be the center of attention. All her life, she had been ignored, overlooked, but now she was Kalin's mate, his Luna, and she had to learn to navigate a world that had never been kind to her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her, and she turned to see Kalin approaching, his usual confidence softened by the concern in his eyes. "You're troubled," he said, his voice low and gentle. Leah didn't know how to answer him. How could she explain the chaos inside her, the fear that she didn't belong? "I'm just not sure I'm ready for this," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Kalin stepped closer, placing a hand on the railing beside hers, his presence a steadying force. "You're stronger than you think, Leah. I see it in you. The pack sees it too." She shook her head, still unsure. "But I'm not like them. I don't have their strength, their power." Kalin's gaze softened, and he gently turned her to face him. "You don't need to be like them. You're not here to be just another alpha. You're here to be my equal, my partner. Together, we will lead them." His words settled over her like a weight, heavy and undeniable. He was right, she realized. She didn't have to be like the others. She just had to be herself. Kalin took a step back and offered her a smile, the kind that reached his eyes, making her heart flutter in her chest. "There's something I want to show you," he said, his tone light, almost playful. Leah looked at him, curious. "What is it?" Kalin's smile widened, and he offered his arm to her. "Come with me." They walked through the palace together, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the quiet halls. Kalin led her to a secluded garden that she had never seen before, hidden behind a set of tall gates and surrounded by lush greenery. It was peaceful here, far from the eyes of the pack and the weight of the palace. In the center of the garden stood a small fountain, the soft sound of water filling the air. Kalin led her to the fountain and gestured for her to sit beside him on a nearby bench. "This place is special to me," he explained, his voice soft. "It's where I come when I need to think, to clear my mind." Leah took a seat next to him, feeling the tension in her shoulders begin to melt away as she looked around at the serene beauty of the garden. "It's beautiful," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the fountain. Kalin nodded, his eyes never leaving her. "It is. But what makes it truly special is that it's a place where I can be myself, where I don't have to worry about the weight of the throne or the expectations of others. He turned to her, his expression serious now. And I want you to know that here, with me, you don't have to worry about being anything other than yourself. Leah's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had always felt like she had to hide parts of herself, to be something she wasn't, just to survive. But Kalin was offering her something different, something she had never imagined possible: acceptance. I don't know what to do, Leah confessed, her voice trembling slightly. I've spent my whole life just trying to get by, and now I'm supposed to lead. Kalin's hand found hers, his grip firm but gentle. You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together. I believe in you, Leah. The words seemed to sink deep into her, and for the first time since Kalin had claimed her, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could be the leader the pack needed. Maybe she could be the Luna she had never dared to dream of becoming. Kalin squeezed her hand and stood, offering her a hand to help her up. Come on. It's time for us to show the pack who we are. Leah took his hand, her heart racing with a new sense of purpose. Together, they would face whatever came next. She wasn't just the rejected Omega anymore. She was Kalin's Luna, and she would rise to meet the challenge. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Leah, as she tried to adjust to her new life beside Kalin. The palace, once a place of cold stone and distant walls, now felt like a home, still grand, still imposing, but with Kalin's presence beside her, everything seemed more welcoming. The pack, too, was beginning to accept her. The stairs were still there, but fewer of them were filled with judgment. Most were filled with curiosity, as if they were waiting to see how she would fit into this new role as Luna. Kalin had kept his promise. He was there, every step of the way, guiding her, teaching her what it meant to lead. He had shown her the palace's secrets, the hidden rooms where only the closest advisors and trusted allies could go. He had even introduced her to the pack's council, explaining to the elders that she would now be involved in all the decisions. Despite his efforts, Leah still struggled. She had always been someone who had been told what to do, someone who had been ignored or dismissed. Now, being expected to make decisions, to stand by Kalin's side, and help lead the pack, felt like an overwhelming responsibility. She spent her nights staring out the window of their shared chambers, gazing at the stars as her mind raced with doubt. One evening, as she sat by the window, deep in thought, she heard the familiar sound of Kalin's footsteps approaching. He entered the room quietly, as if sensing her turmoil without needing to ask. You're thinking too much again, he said softly, standing by the door, watching her. Leah turned to face him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. I can't help it, she replied, her voice tinged with frustration. I've never been in a position like this before. I've never had to make choices for others. What if I fail? Kalin walked toward her, his presence a calming force in the room. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders, turning her to face him. You won't fail, Leah. You're not alone in this. I'm here, and together, we can face anything. His words were steady, unwavering, and for the first time in a long while, Leah felt the weight of her doubts lift, even if just a little. She took a deep breath, nodding slowly. But what if I don't know what to do? What if I make the wrong choice? Kalin smiled, a soft, knowing smile that reached his eyes. Then we'll learn from it. Every mistake is just another lesson. You're stronger than you think, Leah. You're already leading, just by being here with me. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that resonated deep within her. She had always believed she was nothing, that her life would be nothing more than a series of unnoticed moments. But now, standing beside Kalin, she felt something awakening inside her, a spark of strength, of determination. She wasn't just his Luna, she was his partner, his equal, and she would stand by him, no matter what. Kalin gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing over her cheek in a tender, almost intimate gesture. You are the one I have chosen, Leah. You are my strength, my heart. Together, we will lead this pack into a new era. You don't have to be like anyone else, you just have to be you. For the first time in her life, Leah believed him. She believed that she was capable, that she was worthy of the place she had now been given. The self-doubt that had plagued her for so long slowly began to fade, replaced with a quiet confidence she had never known before. Kalin leaned in, his lips brushing against her forehead in a soft kiss. You are my Luna, Leah, and no one will ever take that away from you. As she looked into his eyes, Leah felt a surge of hope, of purpose. She wasn't alone anymore. Kalin was by her side, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path wouldn't be easy, and there would be moments of doubt. But for the first time, Leah felt ready to walk it, not just as his Luna, but as his partner. And that, she realized, was all she ever needed to be. As the days passed, Leah grew more comfortable in her role as Luna, but the challenges were far from over. The pack was beginning to accept her presence, but some still questioned her ability to lead. There were subtle whispers in the halls and glances exchanged when Kalin was not around. It was clear that not everyone in the pack was ready to embrace the change, but Kalin stood firm beside her, reminding her that this was her journey as much as it was his. Leah had come a long way since the first day Kalin had claimed her, but there was still much to prove, not just to the pack, but to herself. One evening, after a long day of meetings and discussions with the council, Leah found herself alone in the courtyard. The moonlight bathed the stone path in a soft glow, and the cool breeze brought a sense of calm that she hadn't felt in days. She had always found peace in the quiet of the night, a time when she could let her thoughts settle and reflect on her journey so far. As she walked slowly down the path, lost in her thoughts, she didn't hear Kalin approach until he was standing beside her. "You're quiet tonight," he said, his voice low and steady. Leah turned to face him, offering a small smile. "Just thinking," she replied softly. "I feel like there's so much more to do, so many expectations. Sometimes it feels like I'm not ready for all of this." Kalin's expression softened, and he took her hand in his, the warmth of his touch grounding her in that moment. "You are more ready than you think," he said, his eyes locked with hers. "You've been by my side through everything, and together, we've faced challenges no one thought we could overcome. You've already proven your strength, Leah." Leah felt a surge of emotion at his words, the sincerity in his voice reaching deep into her heart. It was moments like these that reminded her why she had chosen to trust him, why she had allowed herself to believe in their bond. "But sometimes I wonder if I can be what this pack needs," Leah admitted, her voice tinged with doubt. "I was always the one left behind, the one they overlooked. And now, they expect me to lead." Kalin gently cupped her face, his touch tender yet firm. "The pack doesn't need you to be anyone else but yourself. They don't need someone perfect. They need someone who will stand beside them, who will fight for them. And that is exactly what you will do." Leah closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Kalin's words resonated within her, stirring a confidence that had been buried deep inside for so long. She was ready to be the Luna Kalin believed she could be. As she opened her eyes, she saw the pride in his gaze, the unwavering trust he had in her. It was both humbling and empowering. "Thank you," she whispered, her heart full. Kalin smiled, his eyes softening. "You don't need to thank me, Leah. I believe in you." The moment hung between them, a quiet understanding passing through the air. Kalin had always been strong, always the one in control, but tonight, Leah realized that she, too, had strength. She had it all along, even when she didn't believe it. The next few days brought new challenges, but with each step, Leah felt herself growing more confident. She met with the pack leaders, made decisions that impacted the future of the pack, and slowly, the whispers of doubt began to fade. Kalin never left her side, offering support and guidance when she needed it, but always allowing her the space to lead in her own way. She was no longer just the rejected Omega. She was Luna, the leader of this pack, and with Kalin by her side, she knew that they could face whatever came their way. The days of her uncertainty were slowly fading into the past, and with each new challenge, Leah found herself rising to meet it. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into the palace months ago, unsure of her place in the world. She had found her strength, and it was more than enough. Together with Kalin, she would lead the pack into a new era, one built on trust, respect, and the unwavering belief that they were stronger together. Kalin's faith in her had given her the courage to believe in herself, and now, there was nothing that could stop her. She was ready to be the Luna she had always been meant to be. The days were becoming easier for Leah, and with each passing moment, she felt more and more at home in her role as Luna. The pack was slowly adjusting to the idea of her leadership, and while not everyone was convinced, the respect she had earned was undeniable. Kalin's unwavering support had been her anchor, and together, they were beginning to make real changes in the pack. Leah stood by Kalin's side as they addressed issues that had been ignored for too long, issues that affected the pack's well-being. She had learned quickly that leadership wasn't just about power. It was about listening, understanding, and finding the right balance between strength and compassion. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the palace, Kalin approached her as she stood on the balcony, looking out at the kingdom. "You've been quiet today," he said, his voice low but filled with concern. Leah turned to face him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Just thinking," she replied, her voice soft. "About everything we've done so far, and everything we still need to do." Kalin walked over to her, his presence comforting as always. He took her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "You're doing great," he said, his tone filled with reassurance. "The pack is stronger because of you. You've proven yourself more than I ever could have imagined." Leah's heart swelled at his words, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to be done, more she needed to understand about her place in this world. "But sometimes, I wonder if I'm truly ready for all of this," she admitted, her voice tinged with doubt. "I know I've come a long way, but it feels like there's always something more to prove." Kalin smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting with pride. "You've already proven more than enough," he said firmly. "You are ready, Leah. You've grown into the leader I knew you could be. You don't need to prove anything to anyone." His words, filled with such sincerity, melted the last of her doubts. Kalin's belief in her had been a constant source of strength, and it had helped her see her own worth. She wasn't just the Omega who had once been discarded. She was Kalin's Luna, his equal, and she had earned her place at his side. "Thank you," Leah whispered, her eyes locking with his. Kalin leaned in, brushing his lips against her forehead in a soft, reassuring kiss. "You are mine, Leah," he murmured, "and you are the strength of this pack." Those words, so simple yet powerful, filled her with a sense of purpose she had never known before. She had always struggled to find her place, to see herself as worthy, but now, standing beside Kalin, she knew who she was meant to be. The challenges were far from over, but with Kalin by her side, Leah knew that she could face anything. Together, they were unstoppable. The next day, Kalin called a meeting with the council to discuss the next steps for the pack. Leah was nervous, but she had come to realize that her voice mattered, and that her perspective was just as important as anyone else's. As the council gathered, Kalin stood beside her, offering a silent reassurance that filled her with confidence. The discussions were long and sometimes heated, but Leah held her ground, offering her thoughts when it mattered, standing firm in her decisions. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that the pack was beginning to see her not as the Omega they once dismissed, but as a true leader in her own right. As the last of the council members left the room, Kalin turned to her with a proud smile. "You did well today," he said, his voice full of admiration. Leah smiled back, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Kalin took her hand and led her out of the room. "You're more than ready, Leah. You've always been. The pack will follow you, and I'll be right here beside you." As they walked together through the halls, Leah's heart felt lighter than it had in days. She was no longer the uncertain Omega who had stepped into this world unsure of her place. She was Kalin's Luna, the leader of this pack, and nothing could stand in her way. With Kalin by her side, she knew they could face whatever the future held. The road ahead would not be easy, but Leah was ready for it. She had found her strength, her purpose, and most importantly, her place in this world. Together with Kalin, she was ready to build the future they both desired. As the seasons changed, so did the pack. Leah had fully embraced her role as Luna, and the pack had come to respect her as one of their own. The whispers had faded, replaced with admiration, and the once distant pack members now sought her advice, looking to her for guidance. Kalin, ever at her side, continued to support her as they worked together to shape the future of their pack. But there were still challenges ahead. Not every decision was easy, and there were moments when the weight of leadership threatened to overwhelm Leah. One evening, after another long day of council meetings and decisions, Leah found herself standing in the same garden where Kalin had first shown her the peace she could find in the quiet of the night. She had learned much since then, but tonight, she felt uncertain once more. The path ahead was still unclear, and doubt crept into her mind. Kalin approached her silently, as if sensing her unrest, and without a word, he stood beside her, his presence a calming force. "What's on your mind?" he asked softly, his voice filled with understanding. Leah turned to him, her heart heavy with the burden of leadership. "I'm just wondering if I'm truly ready for everything that's coming. The pack has come so far, but there's still so much to do. And I'm scared that I might not be enough," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Kalin looked at her with a calm intensity that made her feel as though he could see right into her soul. "Leah," he said gently, "you have always been enough. From the moment I claimed you, I knew you were the one who could lead this pack. You've already proven your strength, your compassion, your ability to make difficult choices. You are more than ready." His words were a balm to her weary heart, and for the first time in days, she felt the weight of her doubts begin to lift. She had feared that she would never be the Luna the pack needed, but Kalin had always believed in her, even when she struggled to believe in herself. "I couldn't have done this without you," Leah whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. Kalin smiled, a soft, genuine smile that spoke volumes of the love and trust he had in her. "And you never have to. We're in this together, always." The quiet moment between them was interrupted by the sound of the pack gathering in the distance. The time had come for the pack to unite, to face the future together. Kalin turned to Leah, offering her his hand, his gaze full of determination and pride. "It's time," he said. "Let's show them the strength we've built, the strength that comes from standing together." Leah nodded, feeling the surge of confidence she had been seeking. She was ready now, more than ever before. Together, they walked back to the heart of the pack, side by side, as equals. The pack gathered before them, their eyes filled with respect and anticipation. Kalin raised his hand, calling for silence, and when the room quieted, he turned to Leah, his voice strong and filled with purpose. "This is our time," he said, his gaze meeting Leah's. "We have faced many challenges, but together, we will overcome whatever comes our way. With Leah by my side, I know we will build a future worthy of this pack." The words echoed through the hall, and the pack erupted into applause, their acceptance now complete. Leah felt a rush of emotion as she stood beside Kalin, the man who had believed in her when no one else did. She wasn't just the Luna anymore. She was the heart of the pack, the one who would guide them into a new era. The journey had been long and difficult, but Leah had found her place, and she had found it by Kalin's side. Together, they would lead the pack into a future of strength, unity, and love. The bond they shared, unbreakable and fierce, would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. Leah had come so far from the woman who had once felt invisible, discarded. Now, she stood as the Luna of the pack, not just because of Kalin's belief in her, but because she had finally come to believe in herself. She had found her strength, her purpose, and her place beside the Alpha King. And with that, they were ready to face whatever the future held, together.